Get out. Paying bills doesn't make you family. My dad snapped on Thanksgiving. Mom whispered, "You're only bitter about your brother." I stood in my own apartment, just minutes after my father, red-faced and furious, screamed for me to get out. My mother, not to be outdone, then leaned in close, her voice a poisonous whisper. "You're just jealous of your brother." In that moment, something inside me snapped. That night, I finally shut everything down. By morning, chaos would erupt with cops, tears, and accusations, but I knew, deep down, I was finally free. My name is Rachel, and I'm 28 years old. As a financial analyst in one of Boston's top firms, I should have felt incredibly accomplished. Instead, every single month, as I transferred another $1,600 for my parents' mortgage, I felt like that same desperate little girl still seeking their approval. Despite bankrolling their entire lifestyle, I was always the family disappointment, while my younger brother, Kevin, basked in unearned praise. This Thanksgiving, however, changed everything. Growing up, my father Harold had sky-high expectations, and I could never quite reach them. "Second place is just the first loser," he'd declare, his gaze burning holes through my academic trophies. My mother, Linda, was different but not better. While Dad was openly critical, Mom was passively dismissive. "That's nice, dear," she'd murmur, barely glancing up from a magazine featuring Kevin's latest football triumph. Her indifference cut deeper than any harsh word. Kevin, 3 years younger, was the golden child from the moment he threw his first perfect spiral. My straight A's were trying too hard to show off, while his mediocre grades meant he was simply focusing on what really matters. When I got into Harvard with a partial scholarship, I received a nod and a "well, you always did like books." No one came to my graduation. Kevin had a football game. I learned to find my validation elsewhere. College was my escape, and I threw myself into my studies, determined to build a life where I wouldn't need their approval. For 5 years after graduation, I maintained a polite but distant contact. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. Dad called, his voice heavy. He'd been laid off. At 58, with no degree, his prospects were grim. Their savings were almost gone. The mortgage was 3 months behind. They were about to lose the house. I had just received a substantial promotion, so I packed up my apartment and moved back to my hometown, renting a small place nearby. Without hesitation, I started paying their $1,600 mortgage directly. I covered utilities, groceries, car insurance, about $800 more a month. "Just until Dad finds something new," Mom had said, squeezing my hand, tears in her eyes. That was 3 years ago. Dad found part-time work, barely enough for personal expenses. Mom picked up more hours, but the mortgage and utilities remained squarely on my shoulders. $9,600 a year, every year. $28,800 in total. Did they appreciate it? Not in any way that mattered. Dad still criticized my investment choices. Mom still compared me to Kevin, who, from Chicago, contributed nothing but birthday cards. Yet, he remained their perfect son. This year, I decided to host Thanksgiving at my new apartment. I'd just been promoted again, and my place had a proper dining room. I spent weeks planning a lavish menu, incorporating all their favorites. I dropped $347 at the grocery store, buying organic, free-range, premium everything. As I loaded the bags, I felt a familiar mixture of hope and dread. Hope that this year would be different. Dread that it would be exactly the same. My best friend, Amber, had reminded me, remember boundaries. Thanksgiving morning, the smell of butter and spices filled my apartment. I'd been up since 5 a.m. The dining table gleamed. Memories of past Thanksgivings flooded my mind. Dad complaining about dry turkey, Mom fretting about my single status, Kevin's promotion celebrated while my biggest career wins were ignored. Mom arrived first, carrying a store-bought pie despite my assurances. She immediately criticized my white plates and my turkey recipe. Kevin and his girlfriend, Brittany, showed up next. Kevin, phone in hand, was greeted with Mom's gushing adoration. Brittany, though, brought beautiful flowers and a genuine smile, her eyes observing my family's dynamics with a quiet intelligence. Dad arrived last, 15 minutes before dinner. He grumbled about directions and carried a six-pack of cheap beer, ignoring the craft brews I'd bought specifically for Kevin. Then, I overheard him in the living room. Rachel's going all fancy, probably trying to show off with all that Boston money. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. $347 in groceries. $1,600 in mortgage payments. $800 in utilities. All for them. And this was the thanks I got. At the table, Dad's first comment was, "Where's the stuffing?" It wasn't Mom's, of course. Then came Grace. He thanked God for Kevin, for Brittany, for family bonds more important than any material possessions or worldly success. Not a single word for the meal I prepared, the home I provided for their gathering, or the financial support that kept their actual home from foreclosure. Brittany caught my gaze across the table, a flash of recognition. She saw it too. During a lull, Brittany tried to include me, asking about work. But Mom cut in, dismissing my career and praising Kevin's. That's when I dropped it. Actually, I was promoted to senior investment strategist last month. I'm now managing a portfolio worth over $300 million. Brittany looked genuinely impressed. Dad just snorted. Numbers on a computer screen. Not like real work. Heat rose in my cheeks. My work is very real, Dad. Those numbers represent people's retirements, college funds, security for their families. He shot back. And good money for you, I bet. Which is why I don't understand why you're always complaining about helping your family out a little. The room fell silent. Even Kevin looked uncomfortable. When have I ever complained about helping out? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He revealed Mom had told him the mortgage was due. I explained it was about the 2-day transfer time. There you go again, Dad interrupted. Always bringing up money. Do you want a medal? Mom murmured a half-hearted protest, but his tone escalated. Rachel holds this money over our heads like she's some kind of savior. My hands began to shake. 3 years. $28,800. And not once had I used it to guilt them. I have never held anything over your heads. I cried, my voice trembling. I helped because you're my family, and you needed it. Dad stabbed his ham. What I'd appreciate is a daughter who cares about more than her bank account. Family is about loyalty, not dollar signs. Loyalty. The word tasted bitter. I moved back here 3 years ago to help you. I've paid your mortgage, your utilities, your car insurance. Dad's voice rose. Here we go again with the money talk. You think because you write some checks, you're entitled to special treatment. Special treatment? I echoed, disbelief ringing in my voice. When have I ever received special treatment in this family? Kevin shifted, trying to de-escalate, but I cut him off. No. I want to know what Dad means by special treatment. Do you mean acknowledgement? Basic gratitude? Because I haven't seen much of either. Dad's face flushed red. You want gratitude? Fine. Thank you, Rachel, for doing what any decent daughter would do for her parents. They're happy now? Something snapped inside me. A decent daughter? What about a decent father? I countered, my voice dangerously calm. One who doesn't constantly criticize and diminish his child's achievements? One who shows an ounce of appreciation when that child sacrifices her own financial security to save his house. Dad slammed his hand on the table. That's enough. I won't be spoken to like this in. He paused, then spat. Well, I would say my house, but I guess you'd remind me it's technically your house, wouldn't you? It's my apartment that I pay for, yes, I said quietly, meeting his furious gaze. Just like I pay for your house. Get out, he shouted, standing so abruptly his chair tipped backward. Paying bills doesn't make you family. Get out. The absurdity of being told to leave my own home would have been comical if it hadn't been so excruciating. Brittany looked horrified. Kevin stared at his plate. Mom reached for Dad, pleading, Harold, please. It's Thanksgiving. He shook her off. I won't sit here and be disrespected by my own daughter. Disrespected? I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. That's rich coming from you. Then, Mom leaned toward me, her voice a harsh whisper. You're just jealous of your brother. You always have been. He knows how to be part of this family without turning everything into a transaction. Her words hit me like a physical blow. After everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, this was what she truly believed. I stood slowly, a strange calm settling over me. You're right, Mom. Kevin does know how to be part of this family. He calls on holidays, sends birthday cards, and contributes absolutely nothing to keeping you in your home. I turned to Kevin. No offense, Kevin. He had the grace to look ashamed. I smiled, a calculated expression that felt foreign on my face. So, you know what? You're absolutely right. Let Kevin be the perfect child. Let him take over the mortgage payments and the utilities and everything else. That's $9,600 a year that I'll be keeping from now on. Dad's face paled. Now, Rachel, there's no need to be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, Dad, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. I'm being transactional, remember? And this transaction is officially terminated. I walked to the door and held it open. Dinner's over. All of you, please leave. One by one, they filed out. Dad fuming, Mom tearful, Kevin avoiding my eyes. Only Brittany paused. I'm so sorry, she whispered. For what it's worth, I think you deserved better. After they left, I closed and locked the door. The table was still laden with food, glasses half full, napkins abandoned. $347 in groceries, $28,800 in support, and now freedom at a price I was finally willing to pay. For 2 hours, I drove aimlessly, past the high school where I'd graduated valedictorian to minimal applause, past the park where Dad had taught Kevin to throw a football but never attended my debate competitions, past the library where Mom worked but never displayed my academic awards alongside Kevin's sports trophies. Memories flooded back, the college fund they'd used to buy Kevin a car, the forgotten high school graduation because he had a game. My phone rang. It was Amber. I pulled into an empty parking lot, my voice thick with unshed tears, and told her everything. When I finished, she sighed. Rachel, I'm so sorry. But honestly, this has been coming for years. You've been their ATM, with no recognition, no appreciation, and definitely no respect. They've been financially and emotionally abusing you, and you've been letting them. A tear slid down my cheek. So this is my fault. God, no, she countered fiercely. Their behavior is 100% on them. But continuing to pay their bills while they treat you like garbage? That's a choice you've been making. And you can unmake it. The clarity of her words hit me like a thunderbolt. I had told myself I was doing the right, responsible, loving thing. But what kind of love demanded everything and gave nothing? You're right, I said, wiping away tears. This ends tonight. Driving back to my apartment, I felt a curious mixture of grief and determination. The family I had tried so hard to please, to support, to love, that family might be lost to me now. But perhaps it had never really existed except in my desperate hopes. Back home, I meticulously cleaned up, then sat at my desk and opened my laptop. First, I canceled all automatic payments. Each click felt like breaking a chain. Next, I drafted an email to my family lawyer, formally documenting my decision to cease all financial support. Then I informed the utility companies. The customer service rep sounded sympathetic when I explained. They'll have 7 days to update their payment details before service is affected. 7 days. That was fair warning. By midnight, I had dismantled the entire financial structure I had built for them. Nearly $2,400 monthly would now remain in my accounts. The weight of that responsibility lifted, but in its place settled a heavy sadness. Despite everything, they were still my parents. I booked a hotel room, silencing my phone as it exploded with furious texts from Dad and guilt-tripping voicemails from Mom. I grabbed my bag, taking one last look at my apartment, a place that should have been a sanctuary, but had become another battlefield. Tonight, I was retreating. But this wasn't surrender. This was strategic withdrawal to protect my self-respect. The next morning, I woke to a storm of messages. Dad's calls shifted from anger to panic. Mom's were predictably manipulative. I deleted them all. At work, my receptionist told me my parents were in a lobby, demanding to see me. I calmly instructed her to tell them I was unavailable and to call security if they didn't leave. My boss, Jennifer, came to my office minutes later. Security just escorted 2 people from the building who claimed to be her parents, she said, her expression concerned. I explained everything. Jennifer listened, then simply said, "I'm sorry you're dealing with that. I've instructed security not to allow them into the building again without your explicit permission. This is your workplace." Her support meant the world. By lunchtime, Kevin finally texted, "Mom and Dad are freaking out. They say you cut them off completely. Is that true?" I took a deep breath. Yes, I'm done being the family ATM while being treated like I don't matter. His reply came quickly. "But what about their mortgage? The utilities?" My fingers flew across the screen. "What about them, Kevin? I've paid them for 3 years. Maybe it's your turn." He responded, "You know I can't afford that. I'm barely making enough." "Then, I guess they'll need to figure something out." I typed. "Sell the house. Downsize. Get better jobs. The options adults normally consider when they can't pay their bills." He called it cold. "Funny," I replied. "No one thought it was cold when I was sacrificing my financial future to support them while getting nothing but criticism in return." A few minutes later, he surprised me. "They never told me you were paying the mortgage. They said you were helping out a little with utilities. I had no idea it was everything." A bitter laugh escaped me. Of course they had minimized my contribution. Acknowledging their full dependence on me would have required a gratitude they weren't prepared to give. "Well," I texted back, "now you know. And now it's over." The calls kept coming, not just from my parents but from aunts, uncles, and family friends. My Aunt Susan sent a blistering text. "I can't believe you would do this to your own parents. They gave you everything. And this is how you repay them? By throwing them out on the street? Your mother is in tears." I didn't bother responding. Aunt Susan had always parroted my mother's version of events. As I drove home from work, I spotted Dad's car parked outside my apartment. I kept driving, circling until he was gone. They were clearly trying to ambush me at home. Just as I finally parked, my phone rang. It was Brittany, Kevin's girlfriend. "I'm calling because I think you should know what's happening," she said, her voice dropping. "Your parents showed up at your apartment earlier. When you didn't come home, your dad tried to use his key." My blood ran cold. "His key? He doesn't have a key to my apartment." "That's what your neighbor said," she explained. "He called the police." I filed a police report immediately. The following days saw the utilities at my parents' house begin shutting off one by one. I learned this through increasingly frantic messages from Mom. "The internet just went out. Now the electricity is gone. It's freezing in here." I didn't respond. This was exactly what I had warned would happen. The consequences of their actions and mine were unfolding. A week after Thanksgiving, I sat in Dr. Sarah Collins's office. I'd never been to therapy, but after days of emotional warfare, I needed professional guidance. "You've disrupted a long-established family dynamic," she said calmly. "That's bound to create ripple effects. How are you feeling about your decision?" "Guilty sometimes," I admitted. "Relieved other times. Sad almost always." She nodded. "All normal reactions. You've lost the family you hoped for, the relationships you worked to maintain, and the fantasy that things might somehow improve if you just tried hard enough. That deserves to be mourned." We talked about boundaries, about my role in maintaining the patterns, and the painful truth that an abrupt break was sometimes necessary. Outside her office, I found an unexpected message from Kevin. "Can we meet for coffee? Just us. No parents, no drama." We met at a neutral cafe. He looked tired. "I broke up with Brittany," he confessed. "She was right about a lot of things." He looked up. "Including how unfairly you've been treated." He went on, admitting he'd always benefited from their favoritism, and he should have spoken up. "I've taken over the utility payments," he announced. "Not the mortgage, I can't swing that. But I told them they need to figure out the mortgage themselves." I blinked. "You did?" He nodded. "They didn't take it well. Dad said I was choosing you over family." He gave a bitter laugh. The irony didn't seem to register with him. He then dropped a bombshell. The house is going into foreclosure. They're 3 months behind. They've been taking cash advances on credit cards. All my years of sacrifice, of putting my own financial future on hold, and they'd been digging themselves deeper into debt the entire time. Kevin and I talked for hours, comparing notes on our childhood, acknowledging painful truths we'd both avoided. It wasn't full reconciliation, but it was a start. As we left, Brittany texted me. Kevin told me you two talked. Ending things with him was hard, but necessary. He's got some growing up to do.
So, do your parents. But you?
You're already there. Stay strong. 3 months after the Thanksgiving disaster, as winter reluctantly gave way to early spring, my life too showed tentative signs of new growth. My weekly therapy sessions were an anchor. I mourned for the supportive parents I had never had, for the brother who had been set against me, for the years spent seeking approval always just out of reach. And gradually, the mourning gave way to acceptance. The practical consequences had unfolded. My parents' house was deep in foreclosure. Kevin maintained utility payments, but the mortgage was too far gone. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia offered them temporary housing, an arrangement Kevin reported was already strained. Dad refuses to look for anything beyond part-time work, Kevin told me during one of our regular coffee meetings. Says at his age, he shouldn't have to start over. My mother, Kevin noted, had been asking about me. I think reality is finally setting in that this isn't just a phase you're going through, he said. It's not, I confirmed. This is permanent unless some fundamental things change. Kevin handed me an envelope. My name, in Mom's familiar handwriting. She asked me to give you this, he said. I took it cautiously. Later that night, curiosity overcame caution. I unfolded 2 pages. Dear Rachel, it began. I don't know if you'll read this. For the first time, I've been trying to see things from your perspective. It's not comfortable. I don't like the mother. I see through your eyes. Harold is still angry, still blaming you. I was too at first. It was easier than looking at my part in all this. The truth is, I've never been fair to you. I favored Kevin from the moment he was born. You were always more intelligent, more perceptive, more demanding. You saw through empty words. You needed substance I wasn't equipped to provide. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. Too late. But I see it. The damage we did. The daughter we lost because we couldn't appreciate the remarkable woman she became. I read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation. It wasn't there. Instead, I found something I had never expected from my mother. Accountability. Limited, belated, but real. I brought it to therapy. Dr. Collins cautioned that one letter didn't erase years of behavior. If there's to be any reconciliation, it would need to be gradual, with clear boundaries and consistent change over time. I wasn't even sure I wanted reconciliation. Part of me feels lighter without them in my life. She simply said, that's valid. You're not obligated to rebuild relationships simply because you share DNA. My relationship with Kevin continued to mend. He began to see our childhood through clearer eyes, recognizing how he'd been weaponized in family dynamics neither of us created. I was thinking about that science fair in 7th grade, he told me, when you built that amazing solar system model, and Dad made such a big deal about my participation ribbon in the track meet that fell on the same day. He shook his head. I knew it was wrong even then. I just didn't say anything because, well, it felt good to be the favorite. I reminded him, you were a kid, Kevin. Neither of us created that dynamic. He agreed, but I benefited from it. And now I'm trying to figure out who I am without it. Turns out the golden child identity doesn't prepare you very well for actual adulthood. My career continued to thrive. 2. Jennifer, my boss, recommended me for a prestigious certification program. Your ability to maintain excellent work while handling personal challenges shows exactly the kind of resilience our top clients need, she told me. Emotions and finances are always intertwined. Someone who understands that connection firsthand has an advantage. One unseasonably warm Saturday in late April, I returned from a run to find a familiar figure waiting near my apartment building. My father, looking older and diminished. My steps slowed. "Rachel," he said, clearly nervous. "I wasn't sure you talked to me." "That depends on what you want to say," I replied. He took a deep breath. "You were right about a lot of things. I wasn't fair to you. I didn't appreciate what you did for us." The admission, so long awaited, felt strangely anticlimactic. "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "I'm not good at this," he continued, staring at the sidewalk. "Admitting when I'm wrong. Your mother always said it was my worst quality." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Arizona is a fresh start," I offered neutrally. "Yes," he sighed. "Starting over at 61 wasn't in the plan." He looked up, truly seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. "You turned out well, Rachel. Strong, smart. That wasn't because of us. It was despite us. I want you to know I recognize that." The words unlocked something in my chest. Not forgiveness, but a releasing of something tightly held. "I appreciate that, Dad." We stood in awkward silence. "We're leaving next week. Your mother has the address. If you ever want to, well, it's there if you need it." "Safe travels," I said, not committing to more. He nodded, understanding the boundary. "Take care of yourself, Rachel." "I am," I replied for the first time in a long time. "I really am." As he walked away, I felt no dramatic surge of emotion, no cinematic reconciliation, no profound catharsis. Just a quiet acknowledgement that sometimes healing doesn't look like complete restoration. Sometimes it's just about reaching a place where the past no longer dictates the future. That evening, I hosted dinner for Amber, Kevin, and a few close friends. As we gathered around my table, the same one where Thanksgiving had imploded months earlier, I looked at the faces of these people who chose to be in my life, who valued me as I was, who expected nothing beyond mutual respect and genuine connection. "What are you smiling about?" Amber asked. "Just thinking about conditional versus unconditional love," I replied. All my life, I thought family love was supposed to be unconditional, but it came with so many conditions I could never meet. And here, with friends, where we could walk away at any time, this feels more unconditional than anything I grew up with. Kevin raised his glass. "To finding the right conditions to thrive and the courage to create them when necessary." As our glasses clinked, I realized that the family I had lost had never really existed except in my desperate hopes and futile efforts. What I had found instead, self-respect, true friendship, honest connection, and even a cautiously healing relationship with my brother, was real, solid, and mine to keep. The journey hadn't been easy. The $28,800 I had spent supporting my parents might never be repaid. The emotional cost had been higher still. But as I looked around at my chosen family, I knew with absolute certainty it had been worth every penny. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between supporting family and protecting your own well-being? What boundaries have you set in your relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories of personal growth through difficult situations, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes. Remember, true family supports your wings, not clips them.